All right, we are going to take your opening statement at this time. Let's give you your time now to address us. Thank you, Omage, for elevating that man.
Thank you, Queen Mother, for the gift. Thank you, my host. Said, does the Bible contain contradiction or misinterpretations? Well, I think we've already, the one of contradictions, I think we've sorted that one out. Even solid Christians, the ones more stronger, that even hard theology, because thy kingdom is soft theology, so he hasn't gotten to that point yet. Even hard theology, who is kingdom himself. We've looked at the contradiction. He agrees. A lot of Christians do agree that there is interpretation, but then they gave that contradiction. But then they gave that contradiction a new name. They said it's a minor contradiction. Some of them say it's textual contradictions. So they now found another name to add to contradiction to make it less contradictory in a way. And then it all ends with, but then it didn't alter the message, didn't alter the teachings. But then there are contradictions there. I think the argument is that it's supposed to be perfect. But we know how this book was written. So there's no too much talk about the contradiction side. There's no too much. That one is not an argument. That one is a non-starter. Any Christian that comes here to want to say otherwise, they would have to defend themselves when people start presenting those verses. Even if it's where number says 21, and then in another verse you're speaking of the same thing, it appears as 22. That is contradiction in itself. Whether you want to call it anyhow you want to explain it, as long as you are talking about the same thing, number says 21 here, another one says 22 in the other side, and then you're telling me that's a mistake you would see, and that is a Bible that you would expect to be 100%. But that's just by the way. That's why the Muslims say the Quran. When I made my argument for the Muslims, I told you guys that if you had any, bring those verses, let's see. I told you, use AI, use ChatGPT, use anything, even use Ogun, use Ifa, use Amadioha. Go and get verses from them in the Quranic verses and come and show me the contradiction. None of them could. They only just ran around, and maybe because they don't know. I'm sure the Muslims now, they have a lot of Bible verses that has a contradiction in it. But that one is aside. Let's even leave the misinterpretation. I think it's the whole Christian sect. Whether you belong to the Catholic, the whole Christian sect entirely, all of you, you've all misinterpreted the scriptures. I think the biggest, I know the biggest misinterpretation is you guys looking for Jesus Christ in the Old Testament. That is the biggest misinterpretation of the Bible himself. Looking for Jesus Christ. The people who use the Old Testament, who wrote about it, or the people who use it as their book, they never had Jesus Christ in mind while they were writing that text. The Old Testament, they never thought about Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ was never considered. But somehow, you guys, the new Gen Zs, the new Christians, the rebranded guys, you now somehow manage to be looking for Jesus Christ in the Old Testament. And you've now inferred even prophecies that were referring to kings. Because at the time of the Old Testament, when the Jews were having their interactions, that's their life. It was kings they were referring to. You guys made sure to force Jesus Christ into the Old Testament. That is the biggest misinterpretation of the Old Testament, especially. You are not looking for Jesus inside Old Testament, and then they will say, "Oh, he's a shadow. He's the foreshadow. He is this. He is that." All of you've misread. I don't know why you even have the Old Testament in the first place. Jesus Christ is not there. Jesus Christ is not nobody knew him. Nobody knew him in the Old Testament. He is not regarded in the Old Testament. But somehow, you've all misinterpreted the Old Testament, forced Jesus Christ on the neck of everybody in the Old Testament. Even the Jews don't agree with it. The people who own the Old Testament that started reading it before you, they never considered Jesus Christ. But somehow, you take the Old Testament, you butcher it anyhow you like, you give it your own interpretation, you force Jesus Christ into it, and then you keep insisting that Jesus Christ appeared in the Old Testament. Jesus Christ was there. He was the foreshadow. The Old Testament was talking about Jesus. Who know Jesus Christ? Who born Jesus Christ for the Old Testament? So for me, that is the biggest misinterpretation of the Old Testament, especially. The New Testament, the modern day Christians can do whatever they like with it. They can interpret. In fact, I think the modern day Christians, if you hold on to the Old Testament, the New Testament alone, that will even make you solid. Where it gets worse is the Yahweh in the Old Testament, as ruthless as that guy is, and then you bring him and then you come back in the New Testament, and then you say Yahweh is Jesus Christ. That is a very big contradiction. How can somebody as ruthless, as careless, and as bloodthirsty as he is in the Old Testament, how can he become Jesus Christ in the New Testament? That is a very big contradiction. So that is where I see these things, and that is just the only way I can look at it.